I wasn't sure what was going on before the diagnosis. The first thing I lost wasn't a memory. It was certainty. At first it felt small, harmless even. A misplaced wallet, a forgotten appointment, names drifting just beyond reach like fish beneath dark water. I laughed when people joked about it. Getting older, they said. I agreed, because that was easier than admitting how deeply the moments frightened me. The fear wasn't in forgetting. It was in realizing I had forgotten only after the moment was gone. There's a silence that follows that realization, like stepping into a room and knowing you came for something important, but the meaning evaporates the second you arrive. I began to live inside those silences. I wrote notes to myself, hundreds of them, sticky notes on the fridge, on the bathroom mirror, inside cupboards. Remember to eat, call Martin back. Today is Monday. Eventually I forgot why I wrote the notes. The diagnosis came on a grey afternoon that smelled like disinfectant and rain. The doctor spoke gently, carefully, as if words themselves might break. Early-onset Alzheimer's, he said. We caught it early, he said. There are ways to slow progression, he said. I remember watching his mouth move more than the words themselves. Somewhere in that room I felt a door close, not loudly, just permanently. The worst part wasn't losing memories. It was knowing I was going to lose them. Every morning afterward I started cataloguing my life. I spoke into a recorder describing ordinary things, the way sunlight hit the kitchen window, the sound of my neighbor's dog barking, the smell of coffee before the first sip. I told myself I was preserving moments. In truth, I was trying to prove I existed. At night, I would listen back, hearing my own voice describe the day like someone else's story. Sometimes I didn't remember saying those things. Sometimes I didn't remember living them. And that was when the doubt crept in. If I don't remember it, did it happen? The first time I saw something I couldn't explain was 3 weeks after the diagnosis. I woke in the middle of the night and saw a man sitting in the chair across from my bed. Just a shape. Quiet. Still. I froze. He felt familiar. Not in appearance, in feeling. Like a memory I almost recognized. When I reached for the lamp, the chair was empty. I told myself it was stress. Then it happened again and again. Sometimes it was the man. Sometimes a woman standing in the hallway. Sometimes a child watching from the edge of my vision. None of them spoke. They just waited. I started questioning whether memory itself was a kind of ghost, a thing that visited and left without warning. During the day, I felt mostly normal. I could hold conversations, cook meals, laugh at television shows, but occasionally time folded in on itself. I would be washing dishes and suddenly realize my hands were trembling under cold water, plates stacked in impossible towers beside me. I had no memory of washing them. Soap ran over the floor like melting snow. Minutes, hours. The sunlight outside would shift and panic would bloom in my chest. What did I do during the missing time? I began finding objects moved, photos taken down, drawers open, the front door unlocked. Once I found muddy footprints leading halfway into the living room and stopping abruptly, as if whoever made them simply ceased to exist. Had I done those things? Or someone else? There was a photograph on my desk I stared at often, me, younger, standing beside a woman whose face I couldn't always place. Some days, I remembered her instantly, her laugh, her perfume, the way she rubbed her thumb across my knuckles when she was nervous. Other days she felt like a stranger. I wrote her name on the back so I wouldn't forget. Emily. One evening, I looked at the photo and felt nothing. No recognition, no warmth. Just a hollow acknowledgement of two people who existed somewhere beyond my reach. I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Not because I missed her, because I knew I should. The ghosts changed after that. They became clearer. The man in the chair began to resemble me. Older, thinner, skin almost translucent. His eyes held a patient sadness, like someone watching a slow collapse they cannot stop. The woman in the hallway sometimes looked like Emily, though her features shifted if I stared too long, melting into someone else. Then no one at all. And once, late at night, I saw something darker. A shape crouched near the ceiling where shadows gathered, limbs too long. Head tilted at an angle no neck should allow. Fingers dragging across the plaster without sound. I started calling them demons, because admitting they might be fragments of my own mind felt worse. I kept a journal to track what was real. Morning, eggs for breakfast. Afternoon, walked to the store. Evening, heard someone breathing in the hallway. Some entries looked unfamiliar, written in my handwriting, but carrying no memory of being written. One page read, "You are disappearing slower than you think." Another said, "The things you see are what's left behind when memories detach." I slammed the journal closed, heart pounding. The handwriting was mine, but the tone felt like a stranger studying me from inside my own skull. Then came the mirror. It started small. A delayed reaction. My reflection smiling half a second too late. I blamed exhaustion. But one night, after waking from a nightmare I couldn't remember, I went to the bathroom and turned on the light. My reflection stared back. Wrong. My eyes were there, but empty, like windows into a house long abandoned. The edges of my face softened, details slipping away as if someone had smeared water over wet paint. I leaned closer. My features blurred further. The nose lost shape. The mouth flattened. My face became an approximation, a suggestion of a person rather than a person himself. I felt a surge of animal panic. I touched my cheek. The reflection did the same, but the hand lagged, delayed, uncertain. For a moment, I couldn't tell which version was real. Then the face in the mirror shifted, not into something monstrous, into nothing at all, a smooth haze where identity should have been. I screamed and stumbled back. When I looked again, everything was normal. But after that night, mirrors felt like accusations. The introspection deepened into obsession. Who am I if my face can become unfamiliar? Is identity just recognition? A repeated confirmation from memory that says, yes, this is me. Without memory, do I dissolve? I began sitting in darkness, trying to observe my thoughts before they vanished. I noticed how each idea appeared, flickered, and disappeared like sparks from a fire. Consciousness felt less like a solid thing and more like a fragile process constantly rebuilding itself, and sometimes it failed. The demons grew more graphic. I would see hands sliding under the bedroom door, fingernails splitting against the wood, vanishing when I blinked. I heard whispering inside empty rooms, dozens of voices repeating fragments of my past, childhood arguments, laughter, apologies I never made. One night, I woke to see figures standing around my bed, their faces featureless and pale, mouths opening silently, as if trying to remember how to speak. I understood then. They weren't trying to scare me. They were trying not to be forgotten. Days blurred together. I stopped trusting clocks. Time stretched and collapsed unpredictably. Sometimes I found myself mid-conversation on the phone with no idea who I had called. Other times, I would remember everything with unbearable clarity. Childhood summers, my mother's voice, the first time Emily kissed me in the rain. The weight of those memories felt almost violent. Then they disappeared again. Each return hurt more than the loss, because every memory that came back was only visiting before leaving forever. I listened to an old recording I didn't remember making. My voice sounded steadier, stronger. "If you're hearing this," I said, "you're probably scared, but listen carefully. The fear comes from watching yourself fade while still being aware enough to notice it." There was a long silence on the recording and song. "You're going to think you're dying long before you actually do." The recording ended. I sat in silence for a long time. The final stage began quietly. I woke and couldn't remember my name. Not gone. Just inaccessible. Like a word on the tip of the tongue that never arrives. I laughed, then cried, then forgot why I was crying. That evening the house felt crowded. The chair was occupied. The hallway filled with the shapes. Shadows pressed close, flickering like faulty film frames. I realized they were all versions of me. Every forgotten moment given form. Every discarded identity waiting to be acknowledged. I stood before the mirror again. This time I forced myself not to look away. My face blurred slowly, edges dissolving into soft grey. The eyes drifted out of alignment, then faded, replaced by shifting impressions. Younger versions. Older versions. Expressions I no longer remembered making. I watched myself disappear in real time. There was terror in it, raw, instinctive. But beneath the fear was something else. Curiosity. What remains when recognition ends? The image faded until only a vague silhouette stood before me. A human shape without history. And I realized something terrifyingly simple. The self is a memory that repeats itself. When the repetition stops, the self quiets. The ghosts gathered behind me in the reflection, watching. I understood then that they were not haunting me. They were witnesses, fragments of consciousness refusing to vanish without acknowledgement. I closed my eyes. Thoughts drifted away one by one. Names, places, regrets. Yet awareness remained, thin but present, observing the emptiness expanding inside me. And then even that awareness flickered. I felt myself watching the process of disappearing, like standing on a shoreline as the tide slowly takes the land beneath my feet. The final realization arrived with unexpected clarity. I'd spent months trying to hold on to memory, because I believed memory was my existence. But memory is only evidence of having existed. Consciousness is something smaller, just the brief light that notices. And I understood why the fear felt so graphic, so visceral. Because I wasn't afraid of death. I was afraid of becoming unobserved, of fading without anyone, even myself, to witness it. But in that last moment of awareness, I realized witnessing had never belonged only to me. Every person who remembered me carried a piece of that observation. Every moment left impressions in others. The self wasn't a single point. It was an echo shared across many minds. My reflection disappeared completely. No face, no details, just light. I didn't feel panic anymore, only acceptance. The ghosts faded first, satisfied. The demons dissolved, their shapes unraveling into shadow. And as the voice inside my head grew quieter, I felt something profound. I was not losing myself. I was returning to silence. The story had needed a narrator, and the narrator was simply finishing his last sentence. The fear of disappearing had come from believing I was meant to stay whole forever. But nothing does. Not memory. Not identity. Not even the voice that says I. And when that voice finally softened into stillness, there was no emptiness, only peace, wide and quiet, like a room finally at rest after years of noise. I wasn't sure what was going on before the diagnosis. Now I think I understand. I wasn't witnessing the destruction of my mind. I was witnessing the slow, honest truth that the self is temporary, and that awareness, even as it fades, is enough. Because in the end, I didn't vanish all at once. I watched myself go, and somehow that made it okay.